Looking at the events of GTA San Andreas, it is easy to see that Grove Street Families has had some difficult times in its history. Nevertheless, in the case of the GTA part from 2004, the gang always got back on track, which is why it managed to stay on the criminal map of the city. Unfortunately, when we go to Grove Street in GTA 5, it turns out that the area has been taken over by the Ballas. So, what happened before the events we know in GTA 5 that the Greens were kicked out of there? Was it increased repression by hostile groups, or perhaps the OG of the gang decided to move out of the ghetto and start a new peaceful life? We'll talk about this and many other things in today's episode. Welcome to the Gaming Investigators channel, and without further ado, let's get to work. At the very beginning, we will analyze the differences and similarities between Grove Street families from GTA San Andreas and Grove Street families from GTA 5. This is an important and extremely interesting case because, as we know perfectly well, the gang called Grove Street Families appears in both GTA San Andreas and GTA 5, existing in two different universes. This means that we cannot connect the stories of these two criminal organizations, even though the similarities immediately catch everyone's eye. After all, we have the same name, and both gangs operate in the same territory or have the same colors. Summing up, although many of us certainly see a lot of similarities, due to different universes, we must treat these groups as two different ones, not having a common history. Another important thing is that Grove Street Families in GTA San Andreas was a key set in the structure of the whole Green Gang, while, in turn, Grove Street Families in GTA 5 does not exist and is more treated as a kind of legend. An interesting difference is also the number of factions that form the entire gang. While in GTA San Andreas we only knew 3 sets, in GTA 5 there are already 4 sets, of course excluding the Grove Street Families, which has ceased to exist. Also, comparing it all carefully, in GTA San Andreas, the Greens consist of the following sets: Grove Street Families, Seville Boulevard Families, and Temple Drive Families. Well, as you may remember from the episode about the breakdown of this gang, not all sets lived in harmony with each other. Anyway, looking at GTA 5, the Greens consist of Chamberlain Gangster Families, Forum Drive Families, Carson Avenue Families, and Davis Neighborhood Families. Moving on to the game world itself, as soon as we get to the streets of Los Santos, we can notice that Grove Street Families must have ceased to exist sometime before the action of the game, because their main base was taken over by the Ballas. In addition, this is evidenced among others by one of the comments published on the website dedicated to the Feud baseball team sports team, whose logo has become the symbol of the families. The entry has been made by Darnell Stevens, which, as you see on the screen at the moment, clearly suggests that the gang territories have been taken over by the Ballas, which Darnell is proud of. Next up, unfortunately, when it comes to finding out more details about what happened in the past, it is not made easier by the minimal amount of mentions of this gang by characters in the game. We managed to find references to Grove Street Families in the story during only one mission, called Hood Safari, and also when Franklin will be at a friendly meeting with Michael DeSanta's son, Jimmy. Starting with Jimmy meeting Franklin, there may be times when Jimmy brings up the subject of Grove Street Families. The boy will ask Franklin if the gang itself is not just an ordinary myth, and if Franklin belonged to it.
Yo, so let me ask you something, F-Dog.
Man, it's Franklin. What?
Are you Grove Street? Is Grove Street like a myth?
Man, that's some old school shit. Hell no, it's not a myth. But times have changed, homie. I'm families. I guess like they was.
Moreover, Franklin says Grove Street Families was booming in the early 1990s. This essentially confirms our words at the beginning of the episode, which was about the similarities between Grove Street Families from GTA San Andreas and Grove Street Families from GTA 5.
But things is different now, homie. Ain't like the early 90s no more. So no, you ain't living out some suburban gangbanging fantasy shit with me.
What's more, according to GTA Wiki, Grove Street Families allegedly owned most of the Davis Neighborhood Families' territories, more specifically, the areas located to the south and west. Unfortunately, we were not able to verify this, so we emphasize that it may not be entirely reliable information. However, if we assume that this was the case, a question arises on the horizon. Namely, how did the Grove Street Families' territories come under the control of Davis Neighborhood Families? Personally, we see two possibilities here. The first theory may be that Davis Neighborhood Families was founded by the last members of the Grove Street families in the present territories of this faction. After all, in the game itself, there is no information about when this set was created. It is definitely possible because, with the conversion of Grove Street families into Davis Neighborhood families, the number of factions will still be the same. Grove Street was lost, but Davis Street may have become the new base for the remaining Grove members. On the other hand, the areas of Grove Street families could have been simply handed to Davis Neighborhood families through decisions of the heads of all factions, which, for example, could have been taken at some meeting. For instance, we can think of a meeting made similarly as it was done in the mission reuniting the families in GTA San Andreas. Simply, the OGs of all sets have gathered in one place to decide what to do with the territories that belong to Grove Street families. Let us know what you think about it. While discussing the topic, it would be impossible not to mention the Hood Safari mission, where Franklin and Lamar give us some clues as to how Grove Street families ended its existence in GTA 5. The guys think that the OGs of the GSF have decided to give up their gangster lifestyle and start a new life, raise families, and so on. Not only that, there are even assumptions that many of them became rich CEOs of some large enterprises. We even have a reference to it in GTA 4, but we are unable to rely on this curiosity while not forgetting about the rule of universes in the GTA world. However, returning strictly to the conversation, in our opinion, there are reasonable assumptions that Franklin and Lamar spoke about the GSF members becoming successful because they referred to their situation and the great desire to leave the ghetto and achieve something more in life. Additionally, this option pairs nicely with Darnell's post, which can be linked to the fact that, perhaps, Grove Street families literally gave up their territories, leaving them without any fights. Although it may seem that the abandonment of the gangster lifestyle is somewhat pointless, especially considering that GSF was a real power compared to other factions of the Greens, therefore, it can be assumed that other factors may have contributed to the collapse of the gang. For example, one of them could be the sudden death of most of the gang's OGs as a result of gang wars. After all, Grove Street and the Ballas feuds lasted for many decades, so it is quite logical that the chance that Grove Street OGs have suffered in such battles is quite big. As a consequence, there was a shortage of people who would take control of the gang and manage it properly. To make a long story short, the gang could not be managed by more responsible people, which could lead to the collapse as a result of bad decisions. Another factor that contributed to the disintegration of the Grove Street families, in our opinion, may have been the numerous attacks by the Ballas. Here, in contrast to the loss of bosses we talked about a second ago, the gang may have lost a large number of its soldiers as a result of raids by opponents. Although Grove Street was at the top of street gangs in Los Santos, it is possible that the gang had its moments of weakness, where one of them was so big that it wouldn't let them get up later. And the last reason we want to mention to you is a reference to a rather unusual situation. It is about an American gangster, Gregory Scarpa, who was the capo regime of the Colombo crime family. The man known as the Grim Reaper was undoubtedly a fairly well-known person in the criminal underworld. Unfortunately, as it soon turned out, in 1994, Gregory died in the hospital for a rather unexpected reason: complications related to AIDS infection. Referring to this story, we believe that this virus may have indirectly contributed to the collapse of Grove Street families as well to a smaller degree. With members willing to exchange their ladies, it is no wonder that the risk of infection was increasing, and since AIDS treatment was not of some high level in those years, it usually resulted in death for those infected. Of course, we don't think it had such a big effect that the entire gang disappeared from the map, but certain individuals may have suffered from it. Finally, at the very end of the episode, we think that it would be a sin not to mention the brilliant curiosity from the Hood Safari mission. There is a good chance that at some point we will meet 3 men riding bikes in this mission. It is impossible not to notice that they are hellishly similar to the main characters of GTA San Andreas. This is obviously a very cool Easter egg related to the Sweet and Kendall mission from GTA San Andreas. Probably many people, after seeing this curiosity, had the question whether these characters can then exist in GTA 5. But, here again, the principle of the universe in the world of Grand Theft Auto forces us to exclude this possibility. As for the topic of today's video, be sure to watch the episode about the breakdown of Grove Street families, which is displayed on your screen. For now, we'll see you in the next episodes. Take care!